Shalom, my dear friends. Today, the 24th day of the month of Sivan of the year 5784, corresponding to the last day of the month of June of the year 2024. And already the days in the northern hemisphere are just beginning to get a little shorter day by day, keeping us aware of the coming days of awe, which will be in just over 3 months' time now, Rosh Hashanah, with our eyes trained forward. Shalom from the city of Tzfat here in the north of Israel, as we are indeed today and every day apparently on the very brink and living day by day. And my subject today is the seventh commandment, and not, as you might immediately think, the seventh of the 10 commandments on the 2 tablets of stone that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, brought down to the children of Israel. But there's a more ancient code that I would like to speak about today. And although mine is a soft, quiet voice in the middle of the wilderness, and perhaps nobody except those already converted and those, as it were, in the choir who are with us is going to be listening. Nevertheless, I feel compelled to speak about this subject today, addressing not our people, the children of Israel, but addressing indeed all of the peoples of the earth, all humanity, because the code that I am speaking about today is the universal code of law that God has given to all of the people on earth, the 7 universal commandments which apply to all people, all of whom come from the progeny of the children of Noah, and thus they are called the 7 commandments of the children of Noah. And to begin to discuss the first 6 would immediately lead us into, no doubt, a lot of controversy, because there is no agreement among people about exactly what is idolatry, what is the definition. Some of us would say that things that other people do are idolatrous, whereas they would fiercely deny this. And I don't want today to get involved in discussions about the first 6 of the 7 commandments. Likewise, the question about what exactly is blasphemy is very tendentious, because anybody might get up and say that any criticism of their particular idol would, in their eyes, be blasphemy. And this is clearly not what the 7 universal commandments are about. They're about blasphemy against the supreme deity who rules over all. The 3 middle commandments would be easier to define. The first being the obvious prohibition of murder. The second being the prohibition of adultery and sexual immorality. And the third being the prohibition of robbery, of theft in all their different forms. So with that we have the first 5 in general terms, and the 6th is the prohibition about tearing a limb from a living animal and consuming it, and this is emblematic of the Torah teaching that we must respect all of creation and not cause any unnecessary suffering to animals or to any other creatures. But the 7th commandment is the one that I want to focus on today, because this really is, or should be, at the very forefront of the world's agenda. And there are, in every country and across the world, systems of law. There are law courts in regions, in cities, in countries, in blocks, and now international law. And as we are seeing every single day, nothing is more flouted than the concept of true law across the world, whether it's on the political stage, as we now see that the law is being used by those in power to persecute their opponents, and this is nothing new. This has been going on under tyrannies for millennia. We are seeing the abuse of law on the levels of even petty criminals, and this is something I would like to develop at more length as we continue with this discussion. The bending of the law that evidently gives very permissive and licentious penalties to serious offenders, while actually giving very serious and punitive punishments to people who you and I might consider to be far less dangerous to society. There is obviously a multi-tiered system of justice in place in many, many countries, depending upon who are the judges' perceived friends and who are the judges' perceived enemies. But we'll discuss this in a moment. But before we do this, I'd like to go into the halachic foundation of the concept of the 7 laws of the children of Noah, the universal code, and where it is discussed in our own Jewish sacred literature. And the clearest exposition of the code comes at the end of Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, Rambam Maimonides' code of Torah law, covering all aspects of Torah law, the 613 commandments to Israel and the 7 commandments to all the peoples of the world. And at the very end of the code, in the concluding section, the laws of kings and their wars, where Maimonides discusses the monarchy of the people of Israel and the purpose of the monarchy, which is to bring faith and the awareness of God to the children of Israel through wise government. Maimonides in chapter 8 introduces the subject of the universal code. And let us now look at his words there in the Laws of Kings and their Wars, chapter 8 from the Mishnah Torah. And Maimonides tells us that Moshe, our teacher, only gave the Torah and the commandments as an inheritance to Israel. As it states in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 4, Morasha, an inheritance of the assemblies of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel. And to all who would want to convert from among the other peoples, as it is said in the portion that we read just yesterday, Shalach lecho kochem kager. The Torah law is the same for a home-born Israelite as it is for a righteous convert. However, one who does not want to observe the Torah code of 613 commandments, we do not force that person to accept the Torah and the commandments. This is quite contrary to the current crusade, one might say, of the single most rapidly growing religion in the world, which is to actually force people to convert. We, the Israelites, do not force anybody to observe the Torah. And so Moses, our teacher, commanded from the mouth of the Almighty to, yes, coerce all those who come into the world to accept the commandments that the children of Noah were commanded. So here is where there is to be coercion. Here is where there is to be force. If Israel had the power and even without the power, it is surely incumbent upon Israel to speak about the code and to preach the code to all of the nations of the world. And as Maimonides continues, everyone that will not accept the code is liable to be killed. Now the Torah does have something in common with that chauvinistic religion we just referred to that demands that everybody must convert to them. Here we are saying that everybody must accept the universal code on pain of death. And one who accepts these laws is termed by the Torah the Ger Toshav, the resident who dwells in the land. This is the term Ger Toshav, the resident alien, that is used everywhere in Torah literature to refer to the Gentile who has accepted the laws of the 7 nations, the 7 children of Noah. And continues Maimonides, it is necessary to formally receive the laws, formally accept and embrace the laws before 3 Israelite chaverim, that is 3 educated and responsible Israelites. And every member of the nations that accepted upon themselves to circumcise, but they allowed 12 months to pass without circumcising for conversion to the Torah, they remain one of the members of the nations. And continues Maimonides in this very remarkable section, everyone that accepts upon themselves to observe the 7 commandments and is careful to practice them is included among the Hasidim, the pious and the righteous of the nations of the world. And that person has a share in the life of the world to come. And that is in a case where the individual embraces and accepts the code and performs them on account of their having been commanded by the Holy One, blessed be He, in the Torah. And then He made them known through Moses, our teacher, and they were known already to the children of Noah beforehand and recorded later in the Torah as given to Moses. However, if a person merely observes the 7 commandments because of their own feeling and opinion, their decision that, this is a good thing, this person is not termed a Ger Toshav, a resident, alien resident of the children of Israel, and is not considered either from the righteous and the pious of the nations of the world, and nor from their sages. Now, in the next chapter, chapter 9 of Mishnah Torah, Maimonides gives the scriptural foundation upon which our sages taught the 7 commandments. The first 6 coming out of a verse speaking to the first man, Adam, and the commandment of the not eating a limb severed from a living animal was given to Noah. And we shall just look at this briefly before skipping to his definition of the 7th commandment, which is the one I really need to focus upon today. Over 6 things the first man, Adam Arishon, was commanded. Over the prohibition of idolatry, over blessing the name, that is to say, blasphemy, over bloodshed, over uncovering forbidden sexual partners, incest, over robbery and theft, and over laws, that is to say, a system of justice imposed by a system of judges, law courts, and police to enforce the laws. And even though all of these were received by tradition that we have received from Moses, our teacher, And even though human reason inclines to all of these 6 commandments, we can see that out of the implication of the words of the Torah, it is evident that over these humanity was commanded, over these 6, as we shall see presently. So added was the 7th commandment to Noah, the commandment of the prohibition of consuming a limb from a living animal, as the text says in Genesis chapter 9, when there is flesh that is still with its soul in the blood, namely the animal is still alive, this you may not consume. So these are the 7 commandments, and so it was throughout the world until Abraham came. Abraham came and was commanded over and above these to perform circumcision, and he prayed the morning prayer. Isaac separated tithes from his produce and added the afternoon prayer. And Jacob added the prohibition of Israelites consuming the sciatic nerve, and Jacob also prayed the evening prayer. And when the children of Israel were in Egypt, Amram was commanded with additional commandments until Moses came and the Torah was completed through him. Now, in ensuing paragraphs, Maimonides discusses first of all the prohibition of idolatry, which is a very severe prohibition for which a Noahide is subject to the death penalty. And likewise, he is prohibited to blaspheme. He is executed even if he so much as aborted a living fetus in the belly of the mother. This is the first sentence of Maimonides' formulation of the law prohibiting the nations of the world from murder. This applies even to a willful abortion. And likewise, even if the person murdered one who was critically injured and going to die anyway. Continuing, Maimonides summarizes the very basic code of prohibited incest relationships that apply to the Noahides: the person's mother, the wife of their father, a married woman, a Noahide's maternal sister, a male, and an animal. In other words, the Noahides are, according to this, prohibited not only with these 3 basic incest prohibitions, but also homosexuality, male homosexuality, and bestiality. And he goes through the various details of the prohibited incest relationships, which I'm again not going to go into the details now. He turns to the prohibition of robbery and theft, of which the penalty is very severe. A Noahide theoretically could be punished with a very severe penalty for the crime of robbery. That is a very tendentious decision, but that we can discuss at some other time. Now, the 6 of the 7 commandments of the code were given to Noah as the 7th. The other 6 having been given previously to Adam, but this is the 6th when enumerating the code, the prohibition of consuming from the limb of a living animal that was torn from a living animal. And after going into these details, finally, the commandment that I want to focus upon today, the 7th commandment of the Noahide Code. In what way are the nations of the world instructed with respect to the imposition of laws? They are obliged to establish judges and magistrates in every single region to adjudicate in all matters relating to the performance or violation of these 6 commandments. And they also have an obligation not only to judge in the courts and to impose the laws, but to teach the people, to warn the people what is the law. And a Noahide that transgressed one of the 7 commandments is executed by decapitation through the sword. And Maimonides comments that is the reason why in the story in Genesis of the kidnapping of Dinah, daughter of Jacob, by Shechem, son of Hamor, king of Shechem, and after her rape, why were all of the townspeople of that city liable to the death penalty? Because Shechem had performed a robbery. He had kidnapped this girl, and they all saw and they all knew, and they never brought him to justice. Now, concluding this definition of the law of establishing judges, the conditions for evidence and judgment in the case of the Noahides are different from those applying in the case of an Israelite court judging a Yisrael. In the case of Israel, the requirements for testimony by 2 valid Israelite witnesses in front of a panel of 3 judges are well known. However, in the case of a Noahide, a ben Noach may be executed on the foundation of the testimony of just 1 witness and with only 1 adjudicating judge, and even without having been warned in advance of the crime at the moment of the crime, as is required for a death penalty imposed upon an Israelite by a Beis Din. And even relatives in the case of a ben Noah are eligible to testify and also to adjudicate. However, Rambam concludes that they should not rely upon the testimony of a woman, and nor should a woman be appointed as a judge over them. Well, words of Rambam were written in over 8 centuries ago, and they were written based upon the teachings of the Talmud, which was composed and redacted some 1700 years ago. And exactly how this code is to be introduced into the contemporary world is a matter for long discussions. What I would like to begin with today is to emphasize how far the entire world and the judiciaries of all the nations are quite obviously as becoming more and more evident in the eyes of everybody who follows the alternative media and who is hearing what is going on. We see that the judicial systems in the United States, in the United Kingdom, across Europe, in Australia and New Zealand, in the other English-speaking countries, in South Africa, have all become corrupted, and the same is true in the country that I'm speaking to you from, where the judicial system has been overtaken by people who have no belief in the one God or the Torah of the one God, or essentially epikursim, heretics in the Torah definition of the term, and justice across the world is the most abused concept. In Hebrew, there are several words for the concepts we translate into English as law and justice. Law is sometimes a translation of the Hebrew word mishpat. In contemporary Hebrew, mishpatim, a person goes to study mishpatim, they're going to study law for the purpose of following a legal career. And the Hebrew word mishpat refers both to a law, namely a prescription to do this or don't do that. The Hebrew word mishpat may also apply to the verdict of a case, and the Hebrew word mishpat may refer to the case itself, the case going through the courts, the mishpat of someone or of some group who are having their case. And The other word here involved in Hebrew is the word tzedek. The word tzedek also may be translated as law or as justice. We have the word tzedek, the root of the word, appearing in the word used for a righteous individual, namely a tzaddik. A tzaddik is a person who is righteous, not because they say they are, because they are acclaimed as righteous, because they actually do righteous things. And in the course of our daily prayers in the Amidah prayer, the prayer of the originally 18 blessings, the Shmona Esrei, one of the central blessings when we appeal to God to restore our judges, we praise God as Melech Ohev Tzedakah u'Mishpat. God, King who loved tzedakah, righteous kindness, and mishpat, law. Machon kis'o mishpat u'tzedakah, the foundation of God's throne is law and just kindness. Not just an overflowing splurge of kindness thrown indiscriminately in all directions, but a tzedakah, a kindness that creates further goodness and further righteousness. Well, I would say that my main critique of the legal systems across the world, both in individual countries and in the international sphere, including bodies like the United Nations, which claims the right to adjudicate in matters of world importance, the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, and many other similar bodies, and not to speak of the many other pressure groups and lobbies that are all promoting their particular approach to what should be just and what should be lawful. My main critique is there is a complete absence of the most important element, and that is summed up in one Hebrew word, emet, truth. And the reason is because all of the legal systems are career systems. And you will never have a legal system that is a fair and a proper legal system if it's a career system. It starts with the lawyers. They have to go through the years of their legal training, first of all getting a law degree, going to law school, and then going through their stage, their apprenticeship, until the day comes when they too can stride forth in front of the judges and interpret the law as they please. And of course, after all the trouble and self-deprivation that they have gone through, they and their superior lawyers are definitely going to demand very rich rewards for their services. And why not? They have been through all this lengthy education, their stage, they've worked on this, and they're doing so much for their client. Let them have a nice, good reward. And how much more so as they advance and have some successes on the floor of the court through the power of their arguments and their ability to interpret and twist the words until they get to be appointed to the bench. Well, now, obviously, in countries where the appointments to the courts are political, it cannot be that the judges are going to be untainted by political considerations. It's simply impossible, particularly since becoming a judge is for many lawyers one of the cherries on top of the cake, the plum, the goal to be recognized as a jurist. And of course, the salaries of the jurists are also commensurately comfortable, and the same applies in all of the international organizations where these extensive panels of very solemn-looking judges are all doing very, very nicely on our tax money. And it's quite impossible for any system that is permeated by money, as can be seen, without even investigating the possibility of bribes and perks. It's quite impossible that such a system should be just. And with that, we have to turn to the Holy Torah, and we go this time to the book of Exodus. And in the book of Exodus, we have the original prescription of how to appoint judges given to Moses by his father-in-law, by Jethro. Well, in Exodus, in chapter 18, Jethro is described as coming to the wilderness where the Israelites have come forth out of Egypt, and they have been given the Torah with all of its laws, and there's only Moses, the teacher, to adjudicate between all of them. And Moses has to sit from morning till night, hearing all of the cases of the different people who had disagreements, and to tell them the law. And Jethro tells Moses, if you carry on this way, you'll wear yourself out, and you wear the people out, because this is far too weighty for you, and you will not be able to do it alone. And now, says Jethro, the righteous convert to Israel, with his experience as a leader of the Midianite people, as a foremost influencer, he says now to Moses, and for this Jethro earned himself a place in the eternal Torah of Israel. Now, says he in Exodus chapter 18, in verse 19, listen to my voice. I will counsel you, and God will be with you, and you will be for the people before God, and you shall bring their business before God, and you shall teach them the laws, the teachings, and make known to them the path which they must follow, and this deed that they must do. And here the all-important phrase, and you seek out from among all the people capable individuals, people of strength and power, people who fear God, people of truth, people who hate profit, who hate gain, who hate unjust gain. And you shall put upon the people the offices of thousands, the offices of hundreds, the offices of fifties, and the offices of tens. This is a truly amazing teaching here, which applies to Israel and to all of the world, setting for us the standards of what is necessary for choosing the people who are to be appointed as the judges of the people. It is necessary to appoint judges who essentially are men of spiritual strength and power, that they fear God first of all, and number two, that they are people of truth and they hate unjust gain. It is here that the Torah is teaching us that you cannot have a legal system that is based upon financial gain by the lawyers and by the judges. Well, now go and tell that to the legislatures and hear the howls of protest from across the world. But the righteous will inherit the earth, and the truth shall prevail. And it's up to you and me and all people who are immersed in the Torah, to have no shame in declaring the disgrace upon the entire world today, the disgrace of this deviation from any concept of truth, any concept of the hatred of gain on all levels. Today it's not only the legal system, which is clearly compromised. This is seen in the very the lawfare being used against President Donald Trump at the moment, where it's clear that in the various cases that are being directed against him, there is a horrendous abuse of justice, a horrendous abuse of corruption, where the judges themselves are compromised by connections with people who are profiting enormously from the whole thing. And we see here just little examples of this corruption of the system. But it goes so much further, because today the public have been accustomed to justice being conducted, legal cases, and all can be conducted in the public forum through the media, the mainstream media, be it the television or the radio or the social platforms or any other media, where trial by media is the norm today, in a way that is destroying people, has been used to destroy people. And the same forces that have been using the legal system for the sake of lawfare have also been using the media for the same purpose. This has been illustrated very much so with all of the revelations that are now coming out about the damage done during the so-called epidemic because of the mandates, the damage, the injuries, and the continuing denial of by the very forces who both imposed the mandates and who in many cases profited enormously from them, and none of them has been called to account, and none of them has been called to pay for crimes that are said to be crimes literally against humanity. Well, many very serious doctors and scientists have had their careers ruined by both lawfare and by merciless attacks in the public media. And again, none of this is accounted for. Now, practically no body has been so subject to malignment and an unceasing stream of accusations than the people of Israel and our relation to the land of Israel. And every Jewish schoolboy who's studied the Chumash and has studied the very opening verse and the commentary on the first verse of Genesis by our commentator Rashi, every schoolboy knows that the nations of the world accuse Israel of having stolen the land of Israel. And the Torah itself is Israel's answer to the nations. It was God that created the world, and God that apportioned the nations, and God has given the lands to the nations and has sent away those nations from lands where he wanted to send them away from, and brought other nations in their place. I dare say there's not a single territory across the world today where the existing populations are not descended from some group that entered this territory against the will of pre-existing indigenous populations. All of the nations have stolen all of their territories. Who decides that a given territory applies to a given people or a given nation because that was laid down in 1917 or 1922 or 1948 or any other arbitrary date, 1967. Who decides that America belongs to the white Americans, or does it belong to the Indians, or does it belong to the migrants, or to whom does America belong, to whom does Russia belong, to does China belong, does anywhere belong? We're now to resolve all of the very, very intricate legal questions that would surround a resolution of these questions. Would take probably a judgment of many, many thousands of years, and perhaps a day will come when all of the records will be opened, all the books will be opened. It was in the 1890s, around 130 years ago, that a French officer, Alfred Dreyfus, who had his military decorations and military roles stripped of him ignominiously, and in his defense, somebody stepped forward and says, "J'accuse," I accuse. Well, Israel is subject to accusations every single day from every single Tom, Dick, and Harry across the world, from every organization, from every NGO, and we are seeing all the time that the accusations are baseless again and again. We are seeing that the very forces that are supposed to impose the law have been disgracefully inept, if that's even the word, in imposing the law. This has been the case both in our two major fronts today, Gaza and Lebanon. Where were the United Nations Organization for the Welfare of Refugees when Hamas terrorists were using their hospitals and their schools and their other facilities to store their weapons from which to dig their tunnels, using the schools and the hospitals and the surrounding civilian populations as human shields? Where has the United Nations been that has not found it possible to make any condemnation of any of this, while daily inventing new accusations against Israel and her army and her people? The same in Lebanon. We're now threatened here in the north daily with the outbreak of what could be not only a major war in the Middle East, but could develop into a world war. And the situation is such because sitting just north of Israel's northern border is the Hezbollah terrorist organization, which is dedicated to the destruction of all Jews and of the state of Israel, who are daily firing rockets and sending drones into Israel that have already caused the loss of human lives, and the disastrous ecological results of the fires, the destruction of forests that have resulted. And this is all because the United Nations force that was intended to prevent the Hezbollah from having any place on the northern border of Israel have totally failed in their mission. And since the previous Lebanon war, which is just some 16 years ago, not to speak of all the incursions and terror and all the destruction since then, but the previous war was intended to keep Hezbollah at a distance. There was a United Nations resolution as to this, and nevertheless the United Nations force have unwittingly or deliberately allowed the Hezbollah to extend their tentacles deep into the ground of Lebanon, digging tunnels into Israel and preparing enormous stocks of rockets and missiles and other weapons. So where is the law? Where is the law? The entire world that is preaching to Israel, the law, the law, the law, the law, the entire world is in complete abuse of the law. Well, yes, we surely rightly can be enraged about the situation. We can take pride in the fact that we are on the right side of this if we are attached to the Torah. I've discussed recently that the state of Israel is in no way exempt from this critique of the abuse of law, because the state of Israel, its judiciary, its police force, its government, its prevailing culture are all in rebellion against the Torah of God. And the same criticisms about the absence of mishpat and of tzedek, of true law and true justice that apply to these corrupt governments and corrupt judiciaries and police forces in Russia and China and USA and Canada and France and Germany and Holland and other countless countries are also apply here in Israel. And it's up to you and me and anybody who takes pride in our having been called to the Torah by God, because that is what it is. We were stirred, our hearts were stirred to come to the Torah, and the Torah frees us from the lies and the deceptions of the media, from the lies, the deceptions of the educations to which we have been exposed. And the Torah opens our eyes, and if we look into the Torah, we will see with such clarity and such beauty the laws that should guide and control humanity. A system of law without a system of police is quite useless. That's the problem. The true Torah law lacks today a human police force to impose the law of the Torah. And instead, God Almighty has his system that no one can escape. For the Almighty has his agents everywhere, be they people, be they terrorists, be they car accidents, be they germs, viruses, radio waves, pollution, every kind of agent which they find their way to the people that God decrees must be punished, and those who seem to escape from the penalties in this world are most definitely punished when the souls are taken before the heavenly tribunal in the world of truth, where even the most corrupt liars cannot hide and escape. There is law, there is justice. If there's no law here down below in this world, be sure that there is justice above in the hands of God, in the realms of God. But it's up to us, the people of Israel, now to speak to the nations and demand that they reveal and uncover the corruption that is coming to be seen out between the chinks where the cracks have appeared, the corruption in the medical profession, the corruption in the governments that use the medical profession, the chinks across the entire system. So much is now coming out in some of the social platforms. I do recommend to look at some of the information that is available, for example, on the X platform that seems not to be visible on other platforms, and this, I'm sure, is just the tip of the iceberg of what needs to come out. But we, the people of Israel, even in this time of crisis, in this time of when we are literally under attack from across the world, we can take pride that with thanks to God Almighty, we are on the side of the Torah, we're on the side of tzedek and mishpat. We pray for the restoration of our judges and the institution of a true system of justice, each one of us in our own countries, in the land of Israel and across the world. And it will be Melech Mashiach who will come quickly in our days to restore true justice to the world.